10, 5, and we are live.
Hi, I'm Noel McDermott, and this is the Wellbeing Show. And tonight we're joined by two great guests, David and Charlotte Galbally. Galbally, how people must do this all the time to you with that.
Oh, you got my first name wrong as well.
Like it.
Yeah, it's Alex.
James, Alex.
Yeah. Are you Steve or Dave? I can't remember.
I told you everything happens on this show, like my brain.
Yeah. Right, let's start again, ready?
No, let's just carry on. So how do you say your second name?
It's Galbally.
Galbally.
Galbally, yeah. And we've had mail with Garibaldi and gallbladder on
Garibaldi.
Yeah.
All sorts, yeah.
Which is probably
I have to say, Garibaldis were my favourite biscuit when I was a kid.
I think there was many to choose from when we were kids, really, was there? Or not as many.
We used to call them dead fly biscuits.
Yeah.
Garibaldis. Do they still call them that, kids? I wonder. Do we still have Garibaldis? I wonder.
I don't think our kids would be too keen on them, do you? If they're not covered in chocolate, they're not interested. No.
Well, Alex and Charlotte, it's great to have you here. I'm just going to do some introductions to let the audience know. We're here live, as always, if you're listening on a Wednesday evening in the UK at 9 o'clock. So it'd be great to have you join in. At various points during the show, I'll jump onto Facebook Live or onto YouTube, and I'll see if anybody's put any comments. Sometimes we get comments. It's nice if we can sort of respond to people's questions and ideas. Also, you can give me a call. My number is 07 506 319 745. That's 07 506 319 745. Give me a call. If you're calling from outside the UK, just add a +44 and drop the first 0 off, and give us a call. We'll get you on the air talking to Alex and Charlotte this evening, who are going to tell us about the work that, particularly Alex is going to tell about the work he's been doing as a mental health advocate, particularly around body dysmorphic issues and issues around food and depression and anxiety, and sort of delve into that. So very appropriate topic for what we've been going through at the moment, because all these issues have come up for a lot of people during the lockdown and this, initial phase of the pandemic that we've been in. And sort of on that note, how has it been? I mean, you've got 1 million children to sort out. How have you managed during the lockdown? I can't even begin to imagine what it's been like.
Not really.
I don't know.
Somehow we've managed to get through to what, 15, 16 weeks? It's been a bit mad.
It kind of started as like for everyone, it just started as a bit weird.
It was like a holiday.
It was like a
holiday. It was exciting to start with, that we were all together at home, all in the garden, the sun was shining, we got the paddling pool out, everyone was having fun, and it was good, wasn't it? We kind of all had a nice time. But
then there was an undercurrent of like what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
We were worried about our family, worried about everything. But it's just become like we talk quite a lot, because we as a couple try and talk, because we don't get much of a chance. So we do actually try and talk to each other when we get a minute. And we were just saying how we've felt quite relaxed during this time, and we've actually enjoyed spending a lot. I've enjoyed working from home, spending a lot more time with the kids and Charlotte.
Yeah, my hands on.
And for us personally, it actually has felt quite refreshing. Obviously, the health side of it is separate, but just from a selfish point of being at home
in our family bubble,
it's actually been quite nice.
We've tried to stay positive with everything crazy in the world, but create positive memories, because it's different for them, isn't it? Even for the children, it's such a weird time for them. Like our eldest Henry, who's nearly 7, he's usually at school with his friends, and all of a sudden it's like, no, you can't see anyone, you can't talk to them, you've got to speak on a screen to them. And so without trying to scare them, but making them aware of what's going on in the world, but also trying to go, do you know what, let's have some fun and create memories together and go on bike rides and long walks and just being at home together. Obviously it's very nice, but it's mayhem every single day in our household. It just is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment they've gone to bed, your feet don't touch the ground. It's non-stop.
Yeah.
But we love it. We wouldn't change it. We
Yeah.
love it.
I mean, it's interesting, quite a few people have said that in some ways they've thrived during the process of being at home, being together. And some people in particular, maybe those people that have more sort of social anxiety and stuff like that, being at home has actually been quite a relief in some way.
Yeah.
You're not having to go out there and deal with all the stresses and strains that
I would say like things like the school run. Alex, after he was off with paternity leave with our latest baby, he went back to work. I was then doing the school run with all 5 children on my own, and I could just feel the night before and my stress, my anxiety, my worry about the next morning. I've got to be up at this time, and I was setting loads of alarms and having to take them all on the school run. And then obviously then lockdown happened and you're back home again. I was like, do you know what? The not having to worry about rushing around to get out the door all the time from HB, for me, it's actually been quite nice. And then obviously Alex is working full time from home, but which is fair enough, but he does come out for a lunch break for half an hour here and there, and just having that extra pair of hands to go, right, well, you have them for half an hour, I'm going to have a coffee on my own for a little bit. It's just been nice to be together, hasn't it? It's just taken the pressure off a little bit.
And I think like a lot of people I know that have worked from home, I think like firms have encouraged children to be part of that working from home. I have calls with partners that are very important people, but they've got kids screaming in the background, and like the cat jumps on their head, and we're all in the same boat.
As I say, everyone's in the same position.
Yeah, from the sort of anxiety of life, like we especially with kids, we have football club, gymnastics club. Yeah, there's all these things that have got to be. I mean, they've just started up again, and already it's a bit like, I haven't missed this. He's got to be at football training, and obviously we choose to do these things, but
just trying to fit it around, isn't it?
And trying to get dinner done, and all the things that kind of make life more difficult have all went away for a while. Always looking at your watch, got to be here, got to be there, got to get this done. At the weekend, it's Auntie Jane's birthday, and then it's the dog's birthday, and we've got to go to this restaurant, and it's anniversaries. And as much as that stuff's great, it was nice to not have that stuff for a while.
Have a break.
I just want to say to the viewers, the dog is just out of camera shot, completely exhausted. Has he gone?
He's gone on to the other side. He's not allowed on the sofa, but you must know that
he's taken the opportunity to break the rules. Well done, you. I told you.
He knows that we're too busy and distracted, and we can't tell him off.
He knows we can't shout at him in our normal fashion.
But he's done in, isn't he? The poor thing. He's been done in by all the kids. I'm sure they're loving.
I remember when we bought the, as you said, we've got lots of kids. We've got triplets. When we brought them home from hospital, like 3 years ago now, I remember him sort of looking at us, going,
with puppy eyes.
What have you done? And we were like, I don't know what we've done. I don't know what we're going to do, but it's going to be all right. And
it got worse as they got older, though, because now when they sort of got to toddler, and like they'd be grabbing on at him, pulling his towel, pulling his ears, and he'd literally just sit there looking at us while all 3 of them would be grabbing at him. Yeah. And he's such a good dog, but he literally was like, Mum, save me. What have you done?
He just took himself away sometimes.
Just have a little rest.
Yeah, basically.
But he's adjusted. How was it for you, though, suddenly having 3 more kids? I mean, I guess you knew that there were 3 on the way. At some point, you knew.
Yeah, early on. Well, we had IVF. So for us, we chose to put 2 eggs back in. And then, lucky enough, 2 of them took, which is a miracle in itself. First round of IVF. And then 1 egg, obviously, then split. So to then suddenly go, wow, we've got 3 babies. This is... We've already got a son, and now we just were praying we'd get 1 more. Now we've got 3. Wow, like how do you get your head around something like that? And I don't think you really do until they're here. I think you spend the whole pregnancy just worried because it's a high-risk pregnancy. Yeah. Are they even going to come? Are they even going to arrive? What's going to happen the whole way through? We spent
the whole time trying to convince ourselves that if just one of them survived, that we'd be okay with that, and that would still be okay. But inside we were like,
no, that's really, my heart just jumped when you said that, because I can't imagine being in that situation.
And the doctors
cancel yourself through that. Wow.
And even the doctors saying to you, brace yourself for the worst, and they recommended that we got rid of one of them because the other 2 would have a better chance of surviving.
And we had to like, Charlotte, when they said that to you?
Horrible. Like, I would say, like, we used to go for scans every 2 weeks, and you'd go and you'd be so nervous about going and finding out, is there 3 heartbeats? And as soon as we knew there's 3 heartbeats, great. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we can relax. Oh, we're really happy. And we'd both grab each other and be like, oh, they're fine, they're fine. And then a doctor would tell her, go, don't get overexcited, be realistic. We'll see what happens next week. And you're like, oh, and then you sort of walk out there like mixed emotions, like not really sure what to think or how to feel. And then when they had this conversation with us that said, you know what, to give, this multiples is really high risk, and actually to give 2 of them a better chance, would you consider terminating one? What would you do? And we were like, what do you mean? And is one of them not well? Are they putting a risk onto the other 2? Is there a reason why one of them shouldn't continue? And they just said, no, just purely because, it does put pressure on you and the other 2. And I just said, unless you can honestly tell me that one of them is not very well and they're not going to survive in the long term anyway, or they're really, really putting a lot of pressure on everyone else, and either way, someone's going to suffer there, and there was a good reason to make that decision, I can't make that choice. They're my babies, and it was a really horrible, like, we sort of almost like felt like we were doing something wrong by not making that choice. Like, they almost were like, well, you should rethink about that decision. And we were like, no, we've got 3 healthy babies growing inside me. What, you want me to just choose one? Should we choose A, B, or C triplet? Which one do you want me to choose?
Exactly. I mean,
it's ridiculous. And we knew, without even discussing it, we just both looked at each other and we were like, no, unless you can honestly say that one of them is very unwell and they're not going to survive, and that is, say it's better for that baby, of course, never.
Although, to be fair, the consultants, we were at what's the hospital called?
King's College.
I can't remember, but they were amazing, and I think they were just trying to manage our expectations a little bit, because if you go out and buy 3 of everything and start
it's
planning,
sensible way to be.
They were right, because we've joined people on their journey, not literally, but on our social stuff, where they've become pregnant with 3 and they've ended up with 1 or 2, and that happens quite often. We're very, very lucky what happened to us, because we did have a few complications, like they weren't growing as right and there weren't enough fluid in the sac, and I think the hospital were just trying to not make us get carried away, and that was a hard burden, wasn't it?
But in a way, as I say, it was a tough, because then you never really enjoy the pregnancy, because the whole entire time, every 2 weeks you go for that scan, which then turned to weekly scans, you're just constantly worried. The build up to the scan, you're worried. During the scan, you're worried. Then it's a relief, and then you start worrying again, ready for the next scan. And it just felt like it was a constant pain. But then equally, we were convincing ourselves it's okay. Whatever happens is meant to be. Be realistic throughout the whole entire thing. Let's not get carried away. And in a way, that probably made us stronger in the long run, because we were mentally preparing ourselves that we were going to get 3 babies. The hope and prayers that we would get 3 babies. And lucky enough we did, but we also didn't get carried away with the fluffy side of it, if you know what I mean. Like, going and buying all the baby grows and being like, oh, isn't this cute? We were like, right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. We didn't build cots until a couple of months before they were born. We didn't do a room for none of them, nothing. We literally kept very, very distant, I suppose, in a way, which is quite difficult when you're trying to bond with babies inside
we were
you.
Like, I'd rather build 3 cots the night before than have to take one down. Like that,
which
would just
absolutely heartbreaking, wouldn't it?
Which is quite a raw.
That would just kill me. Like,
yeah.
And we didn't want to put ourselves through that, so we were a bit.
And people would say to us, like, I think they took our calmness as stupidness.
We were really relaxed.
Almost. We were so laid back, and people would say to us, like, you do know you're having 3 babies. You do realize your life is going to change. You realize how much you got to do. Like, why aren't you doing anything? And we're like, we will. We know what we've got to do, and we'll do it in our own time. And we did. Before they were born, we had everything that was needed. We were fully prepared, fully organized, but we just did it when we was ready for that. And people would literally say to us, like, I don't think you know what's going to hit you when they arrive. You don't know what's coming your way. And we're like, we do, but we're doing it in our own way. Well, it was a shock still, even no matter how much preparation you can get, it's still a shock.
I imagine the reality is something unique and special. And then you had a fifth child.
Yeah.
So then we were very, very
Bit of an
lucky,
unscheduled arrival.
very lucky. We were blessed with a natural
Right.
pregnancy, which was unbelievable, a lovely surprise. And I often say we never said no to no more, but we always said, oh, we'd probably wait until the girls were a little bit older if we ever decided to have another child. But we always knew maybe there was one more there, wanting one more. And obviously our latest one joined us a bit sooner than we expected, naturally. So it was an absolute God blessing. And yeah, and you know what? He's called Jimmy. He's 10 months now. And he was like, the missing part of the puzzle is what I always say, but we didn't know he was there was never a missing part until he arrived.
Yes. Yeah. No, I get that. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, like I feel.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, Henry being the only boy had 3 girls, sisters, and he loved being that big brother, and he was amazing. They bonded so well together. But it was only when we found out we were having a boy, that Henry would say things to us like, oh, does that mean that me and Jimmy can now match like the girls match?
Oh,
And I thought, gosh, I really never thought about how deep that is, really. Like that as an older brother, maybe he felt quite left out, but he never told us that. Maybe he didn't. Maybe that's just how we read it. But so we were really over the moon, especially when we found out we were having a little boy. Then Henry would have his brother. The girls adore him, literally. They think he's a real life baby, like baby doll, I think. They literally mother him constantly. But yeah, it was a lovely surprise.
Yeah.
The best thing ever.
Right. Only the dog is realistic about all the work involved in this family.
The dog, when we brought home Jimmy, he's like, Mum, not anymore.
5 kids, I give up.
He's like, I'm leaving.
Ironically, the dog we got a dog about 7.5 years ago because we were struggling to conceive our first.
The alternative child, that's often the case.
Yeah, kind of we're like, right, let's get a dog, and like, don't get me wrong, we love him to bits, but
he was a nightmare.
Now we've got 5 kids and a dog, and you know, we often look at him and think, what must he think? You know, living in his house, his mayhem, but he was a massive part of the family.
He was a puppy when I fell pregnant with Henry, and
Right.
he was at his worst. He's a beagle, and anyone that knows beagles, they are so naughty. Like we got home once and thought we'd been burgled,
Like
because
genuinely.
he ripped up all sorts of stuff. He chewed things. There was stuff everywhere. We were like, what on earth? And there was points where we were like, we can't have this dog while we're having a baby, like. But then we both cried and we were like, we could never get rid of him. He's part of the family, and that's it. He's 8 years old next week, and he is part of the family.
And now the girls are 3, we kind of started walking him, because we went for a stage, because obviously Charlotte being at home on her own with, you know, 3 1-year-olds, and what was Henry, 4, 5.
Yeah.
You can't go for a dog walk. It's just
Everyone's like, why can't you just put him in a pram and have him as well? I was like, have you tried pushing a triplet pram and a little boy on a scooter and a dog? I was like, so I try and go off an evening for 10 minutes before beagles. It's just not enough. They need real good walks, really.
He started to get it now. So.
But he loves it now. We go with the field of an evening. We've got a bit more, especially with lockdown. Lockdown's massively helped that. Alex finishes working now and, you know, signs off pretty much 6:30 or something. So I can then go, right, you look after everyone. I'm going to take him down the river for an hour, and I get a bit of headspace, a bit of time out. Reggie gets a good walk, and it just works, doesn't it, really?
It's coming over.
And us know we're talking about it.
I've got to let him out. Sorry, this is unscripted.
Okay, no problem. How is it now that you're coming out of lockdown? How is it? How are you finding it? Because it's a transition, I think, for people.
Yeah, I won't lie. It feels like I don't feel like we've come out of lockdown yet. Does that make sense? Even though people around us are easing and they're going to pubs, or they're a lot more shopping, you see a lot more activity out and about. For us, we're still kind of in our little family bubble, and we haven't quite explored as much as other people yet. We went out on Tuesday, to a canal local to us, like a lock, and had little tea rooms, and we sat on the benches and we had a cup of tea and a cake, and it was sort of probably the first thing we've really done that felt normal, and it was nice. It was nice.
We're trying to take on board what we've learned about ourselves during lockdown and adapting it to our family life a little bit. We don't need to, you know, trawl around the shops all weekend and think that that's a good thing to do, because it's not. And we don't need to drive. I'd always had this thing of like, let's get in the
must
car,
get out, yeah.
let's drive to the beach, or you know, whatever it is, a museum or a castle. And don't get me wrong, things are great, but equally, like we can have a nice time at home,
the garden.
and we don't, you know, no one really knows what's going on out there. And even though we're coming out of lockdown, I think like we said earlier, we kind of like the slower pace of life. Like if I was 21, I'd be booking a flight to Magaluf or whatever. But like we've got 5 kids who are 6 and under, and we're quite cool with just taking it a bit easier. I think the best part is that we've been able to see our extended family. So we've been able to see parents, aunties, uncles, you know, cousins, you know, our children see their cousins. Not all of them. We haven't quite yet done that. There's quite a lot of my family, but generally we've mingled a lot with the family a lot more recently, and that's been really nice because that is definitely missed. But we haven't gone too crazy yet. I think we're just going to take small steps and ease ourselves back in gently.
Yeah.
Also, as Alex said, almost take this last couple of months as a real reminder of what is necessary. Like, do we need to drag everyone out in the car to have a day out, when actually half the time when we've been out, it's been a nightmare because it's cold and it's windy and it's rain, and you're like, why do we bother?
And they just moan the whole time.
And you think, why have I bothered? When you actually think, do you know what? At this age, maybe it is about giving them just that little bit more time and being in the garden, or going for a walk with the dog down the river, or going on a bike ride, and just sort of stripping it back to basics, really. And I think that's something we've definitely learned in this lockdown, where previous to that, we were definitely the people that were, right, let's go out for the day. Let's do this. We've got to get out of the house because it's a nightmare with all the children. Well, don't get me wrong, even now we love going out of the house, but it's a different type of like visit, isn't it? We are very outdoor people, because I think all children love that, but it's more simple life, and we've really liked that, haven't we?
We like, I mean, we're a bit sad, but we quite like garden centres, and we went to one the other day, and we got back and we were both like,
yeah, we hadn't
didn't
missed
really
it,
enjoy that.
Yeah,
you know, it was just like a load of people, not like kind of all looking odd.
Everyone felt a bit awkward as well. You don't want to go near anyone. You can't really do anything normal, can you?
Yeah, the kids just moaned the whole time, and you know, I spent 50 quid on I don't know what, and it was like,
what have we
I don't
done?
know why I was quite happy having a barbecue in the garden, and you know, the kids going around on the scooters, and like.
Do you have any particular anxieties about coming out of the lockdown? Are you worried about any aspect of it?
No, not really. Like, I think I part of my anxiety is about, I always think the worst of situations, and I'm obviously worried about my job. I'm worried about our other job that we have, you know, the social stuff. I worry about that. I worry about losing our house. I worry about like practical stuff because I feel responsible for it. You know, with the young family we've got, but no more than normal. You know, I don't.
Which is surprising, really.
Yeah, it is really surprising, and like obviously we'll go into it more later, I would imagine. But like when I spoke to my I told you this the other day when we had a quick chat. But when I spoke to my therapist, I said like my anxiety just doesn't feel. I'm not worried about this situation, and he was like, "That's so weird because so many people with anxiety," and I've spoke to quite a few people online and stuff, and they've said the same thing. Like they've just felt it's gone or not gone, but it's not active over this for some reason, and maybe that is a result of the manic lives we were all living, and this made us chill out a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, my anxiety levels went down because being at home was a lot easier for me than managing the social anxiety. And
it's a comfort, isn't it? Home is your comfort. That's your safe place. It's not having to worry about everything.
The messages from the world were it's okay to isolate. I don't mind isolating.
Yeah.
I really don't. I'm okay with that. It suddenly became healthy, and the pressure for me to go out and sort of engage in doing things. And like you say, Charlotte, you know, this pressure on to be doing a certain type of lifestyle just went out the window. So I mean, I found it. I did miss though, and I said to you, I went to see my stepson over the weekend. It's the first time I'd seen him since the beginning of the lockdown, and it involved quite a long journey because he doesn't live in the UK, which is why I hadn't been able to see him. That I missed, but all the rest of it, I really don't miss being on a packed tube station.
No.
There's nothing about that
Yeah.
I want to come back into my life. In fact, I bought a bicycle because I intend to avoid it as much as possible.
Excellent. I think a lot of people would change the way they live. I think it's definitely made us rethink definitely about how we live our lives. And we were, oh, let's just drive here to A, and then we'll go from to B, and then back to C, and and it was always trying to pack every hour out doing something. And I think for us, it's just trying to learn to manage that now and enjoy. Like, I don't want to come back in.
Don't want to come in.
He can come back.
And one thing that like my biggest worry at the beginning was how I was going to exercise, because my problems I have with my weight and that sort of stuff is kind of linked to exercise as well.
Yeah.
And on the day it all started, I bought an exercise bike, didn't I?
Yeah.
Literally
Panic bought.
I spent way too much money on this exercise bike, because I was like, right, if we go into full lockdown, I can still exercise, because if I can't, so I literally go Christmas Day every day. If we're going on holiday, I have to go before we get up to get a flight. When we arrive on holiday, the first thing I do is go for a run.
Obsessed.
It's ridiculous. But although that is something that I struggle to control. But one thing that I did notice that was really nice was the amount of, when I bought a bike, started going out on my bike when we were working from home, got right into cycling, and the amount of people on day one, there was a few people, and then started seeing all these families going out walking, and then people on their bikes, and people who I'd never seen before. I have problems with my weight, so I'm not degrading anyone that struggles with their weight, but I saw people that you probably wouldn't normally see out walking, all getting out and all doing it as a family, and that was great to see. And you could just see on their faces that was probably the highlight of their day, because there was nothing else to do. But I think that's another really positive thing that came out of not COVID, but lockdown. Obviously, they're two separate things, but and I hope people continue doing that, because I think doing that with your kids, and we've done it with ours, and I can't get all the kids on my bike at the same time, but I've got a seat at the front and the back. And
I was going to say, I bet you give it a good try, don't you?
Yeah, I do. One of them don't like it. Lottie don't like it. So it sort of does me a favour, because there's no, because you should see when we get in the car, they all fight over what seat they're going to sit in. But
they all want to sit next to Jimmy.
Yeah.
They're always like, me, Jimmy. So you have to agree before you open the car door, right? Who's sitting in what place?
And don't be under any illusion. 3-year-old girls do
they are
fight,
stubborn.
and they do the fists, and they're
not
like,
quite, but they are stubborn.
They're getting there, I think. But yeah, like once I'd kind of cracked that I was able to exercise no matter what now, because I've got this bike that's still in a box, because I've been going out, I've been able to go out.
Yeah.
Great.
It's still in there, but I've got it. It's just it's that kind of having the comfort of, it's like when you give up smoking and you've got a pack of fags in your drawer that you just in case. That's another story.
Yeah, it's a whole new story, that one.
Yeah, but I suppose like what I'm saying is that it's been really nice to see the people out, and I just hope that people continue doing that, because we're gonna, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think going back to you, like with his anxiety about his weight issue that he's had for many years, and is up and down, and as soon as lockdown was creeping in, his main priority, obviously apart from keeping us all safe, was right, what am I going to do if I can't go out and run? Because he used to do run. Well, how else am I going to do it? And what if we're not allowed out at all? And originally, obviously, it started out you only allowed out once a day for a form of exercise. But before that, he's panic levels, weren't you? You could see it.
Well, they shut the gym.
The anxiety, the gym's suddenly closed. You can't go out, and it's like, right, I need to order this exercise bike, and I'm on Amazon Prime trying to get it next day delivery, because I was thinking I'm never going to get it otherwise. And the sheer panic, weren't it, for you, was quite...
You've mentioned several times. I mean, I wanted the conversation just to flow like this, because what's happening is I think people are getting to see this normal couple with a huge number of children and managing what's going on. And I didn't really want the show to start with, this is X, Y, and Z who has a whole list of pathologies and problems.
Yeah, he's mad.
You know what I mean? It's like,
I agree.
Just
Yeah,
not the way to introduce somebody.
no, I agree totally.
Because
It's
I
not-
think the story here is one of growth and recovery and embracing life, and that's the really interesting story. But let's, just because we're at that point in the show, I think, but let's maybe go back a little bit and sort of maybe introduce you. Why are you a guest on the show? Apart from you're really nice people, you're on the show because you're an advocate around mental health issues. Both of you are advocates around mental health issues. So tell us something about some of the struggles that have been going on that you are advocates around. And I know in one sense you're the identified patient, aren't you, as we say in the lingo, Alex? But as we were talking about on the phone before the other week, that it's nonsense to try and think of it in those terms, because if you have a partner and you have a family, everybody's involved in it.
Absolutely.
And it has to be thought about in those terms, which is why we wanted Charlotte there as well for your experience, Charlie, because it's these types of complex issues that you've been living with most of your life are not easily treatable in the individual, because they become part of the life of everybody around them. So the best form of treatment, if you like, is that everybody gets involved, everybody gets involved in the recovery and the healthy behaviours. But tell us, if you don't mind, Alex, something about the types of struggles that you've had and when they started. Let's hear a little bit of that story, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about this earlier, like the best way of describing it, but there wasn't like a defined kind of, it's not like, oh, my knee's hurting, and then you go for a scan, and then you've got no cartilage, and then you have an operation. It's something that you don't realise you're going through until either you admit it or something bad happens. That's just my opinion. And I suppose mine, when I think back to when I was younger, there was a lot of anxiety in my childhood, but I don't really know what the reasons were. But I remember being at school and crying, thinking my dad was going to die at work, and he was a window cleaner in London. And I remember just used to lay in bed, almost my chest hurting, because I was so worried.
Then, what sort of age were you when that was happening?
One
of you've got your phone on the table where your computer is.
Oh, sorry.
All right, no, sorry. It's just there's lots of buzzing as people are obviously messages going, well done, good show. Why
are you pretending you're so nice? No, yeah, I was at primary school, because I can see myself sitting there. I was probably about 8 or 9. And then I remember I used to sort of, as you do, I was obsessed with like earthquakes and volcanoes and things, like as a boy, and the girls are as well, I'm sure. And I remember then worrying about dying from like an earthquake and laying in bed, like getting really worked up about it. And I never told my parents.
You never talked to anybody about these things?
No, I didn't even acknowledge it, really. Like, it just became like a thing that kind of, I suppose, I thought was normal. And then I sort of, I don't know, like my childhood was pretty normal, and my secondary school was pretty normal, and I was, fortunate to be sort of quite popular at school. So I never really, like I said to you the other day, I was a bit chunky, but I wasn't massively fat. I played football and all that sort of stuff. And then I sort of left school, and believe it or not, I worked in McDonald's, which probably didn't help. And I ended up putting on a lot of weight. And then that's when I started drinking as well. And I was probably about 17, and I started kind of eating more and more. And then the worse I felt about being fat, the more I ate, because obviously that makes you feel better. Got a massive sweet tooth anyway, like everybody has. And then obviously alcohol came along, and I was always like the joker of the pack. That was how I got through school. I was the funny one, or I tried to be funny. Still do. And and I felt like, I mean, I only recognise this now because I didn't at the time, but I always felt like the entertainer, and I had to carry on this like act of being like making everybody laugh, and no one would really like me unless I was funny. So I was always pushing the boundaries of that, and then I was the one that could down a pint in 3 seconds, and then I'd be the one that blacked out because I was so drunk, and I was the one that was sick, and then I was the one that got arrested, and it was all very kind of, that was going on one side, but then the next day I was feeling anxious, but I didn't realise it was anxiety because I was worried what I'd done while I was drunk. Then I'd feel so rubbish that I'd eat loads, and then I'd feel even worse because I was really fat, and I was desperate to look like everybody else. You know, I was desperate. You know, some people are big and they don't care and they're quite happy, and good luck to them. You know, I wasn't. I was really unhappy with it, but I just couldn't get out of it. Basically, it was just like a vicious circle of kind of keeping up that, being that guy meant always being the one drinking and eating and smoking and all the other stuff, and it kind of just sort of carried on. And then I don't really remember having that many problems with anxiety, depression, and I obviously had the consciousness about my body, but I was 20 stone, so I guess that I thought that was pretty normal. But it wasn't until I lost the weight. I was about how old was I when we met? 25. I was about 23, and I lost about 6 stone really quick because I just had enough of it. Started running, couldn't even run a mile when I started. Ended up running a marathon. You know, did the real like kind of, if you was watching Weight Watchers, it'd be like that guy with the big trousers. You know, started eating right, got right into exercise and all that. And the weight came off, felt really good. I was really happy for a while. And then that's when the kind of, I guess the body dysmorphia, which again, I didn't know what that was or was even a thing until a few years ago, that kind of started because I'd look in the mirror and I wouldn't see what everybody else saw. I'd still see that fat person, and, you know, I'd throw clothes away, I'd get upset. And then
when we met, he was he's probably skinniest, I would say. So we met when he was about 25, and he'd already lost all the weight, and he was really like quite slim for such a tall bloke. And people would say to us, "Gosh, Alex is so little now. You should have seen him before, and he's done amazing." But he was just never happy, even though he was the smallest he had ever been. He still said to me, "Do you think I'm fat?" Like even on our first few dates, like he wouldn't want to go for meals because he was like paranoid about eating and things like that. And like, weren't you? And like, I never really knew it was a problem until a lot further down the road, obviously. But I'll be like, "You're not fat. What are you talking about? You look amazing." But under his clothes, he was paranoid about his body, about eating in front of me, about eating too much, not eating enough. And like, it was kind of like a roller coaster, wasn't it? And I don't think you really, even then, you should have felt happy because he'd lost all that weight, but you still wasn't.
No.
And I think that's when I recognized it. But I think that's maybe for you, that's when it sort of become obvious. There was like not quite right.
Yeah, I think.
And what did you think of all that, Charlotte? I mean, you were sort of with him. And,
for me, it was really strange because if I'm really honest, I've never, luckily enough, had to deal with anything like mental health myself. So I didn't really understand, if I'm honest, what he was going through. So he would say things to me like, "Oh, do you think I'm fat?" And like, "Oh, I've just been really overweight and I've lost it, but I don't think." And I'll just be like, brush it off, like, "Don't be so stupid. You look lovely. What's wrong with you? Like, be confident, be this." Like, and I'm just really outgoing, confident person. And he probably inside was dying, thinking, "Oh, look at me. I feel awful about myself." But it wasn't until time went on and we probably moved in together and I could see how much it really affected him. And like he said, we'd go out for a night out with friends, and he would take longer than me to get ready. And I've got long hair, blow drying, curling. He would be trying on 20 outfits, throwing on the floor, getting frustrated, literally ripping a shirt off. Like, "I hate this shirt now. Oh, it makes me look really fat." And I'd be like, "Whoa, what is going on with you? Like, this isn't right. Like, what are you talking about? And it's kind of then I think we both started seeing little signals of this is a normal behavior, in a way of like, you need to acknowledge what's going on here. You're not fat, you've lost a lot of weight, you look good, you're healthy, you should be proud of yourself. But he would look in the mirror, he would walk past the shop window and look at himself, but not in a vain way, checking if he looked fat. And I'd spot him and say to him, are you okay? He's like, I just feel fat in everything I wear. And
I still do it now.
yeah.
I can't walk past a pane of glass or a mirror without looking at myself and thinking, do I look fat? Wake up in the morning, first thing I think, last thing I think at night.
Do you think I've put weight on, Charlotte? Do you think I've put weight on? I'm like, no. And like, to begin with, I had struggled with it because I was like, you're meant to be saying to me, oh, you look really nice, Charlotte. Like, or it's meant to be the woman that usually goes, oh, does my bum look big? And like, it was almost the opposite way around. And like, I never really understood it. I was just like, I don't understand what you're going through. But like I said, as the years went on, I kind of understood how he was feeling and allowed myself to go, do you know what? Let's talk about it more. And we sort of did, didn't we? As 6 months, a year passed, we'd discuss it more about how he felt. And the more I understood, it was easier for me to see when he was going through them stages as well, I think. Like,
yeah.
So at the time, Alex, were you aware that this was a problem inside your head, or were you so much in the dysmorphia that you actually thought?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. I mean, I was just sort of caught in what was normal to me.
Tell us a bit more about that, because I think some people can't wrap their heads around what this dysmorphia thing means. I mean, you would look in the mirror and what you saw was not your body, it was the one you imagined inside your head. Is that right?
And it wasn't the one I had before. It would just be, I mean, if we look at myself now, I would only see, if I've got if I've got a little love handle, I'd only see that. Or if I've got a t-shirt that's a bit tight and, I look a bit, I'd just see my massive belly. Or as soon as if I shave my beard off, I just see my double chin. I don't see anything else. You don't put into proportion your whole body. You just look at that 1, 2, 3, 4 areas that everyone's got that stuff. And I'm not over it. I'm not over it now, to be honest. I'm still kind of in the midst of it, and I don't think I'll ever be over it because it's just difficult. But obviously the exercise,
we'll have to define what over it means. So I just want to make it clear for people who may not understand dysmorphia, because it is that thing where it's obsessing about certain aspects of body and not being able to see the whole body and not being able to see the whole of self. So like you say about the double chin or a bit of extra roll somewhere, that becomes the defining feature of your experience of yourself and your body, correct?
Yeah, that's it. And you're never satisfied with, I have to delete numerous photos until I get that one that I don't look that fat in, rather than...
They all look the same.
Let's come back to
they all look the same.
Yeah, I want to come back to the eating as well, because it's really interesting, this sort of thing about this cycle of eating, this emotional eating, as we might call it, as a way of trying to deal with the feelings of how you feel about yourself. You might say how I feel about the way I look, but it's actually how you feel about yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
And then going through that process of, eating the food, which will give you, because food does, when we consume food, it gives us a temporary shift in mood.
Yeah,
because it has that effect. It has that we have these reward chemicals in our brain. So there is a reward that we get from eating, which will shift our mood if we're depressed or anxious. But then something else would happen for you after you've done the binge, the sort of whatever amount of food. You would then feel what? What would happen to you?
It was, for me, it was like a guilt of, you fat person, you've done it again. It was like a kind of, I beat myself up over what I've just eaten, but for that 10 minutes of stuff in my face was amazing, and everything tasted good and I felt great, and I was like, I don't care, I'm just going to eat this. And then it would be like I'd put the sweet wrappers in my pocket,
That's
I still do it now. Yeah,
you should say that, because that's something really important. I think that he would hide what he was eating, even though we would both get a chocolate bar on a Saturday night watching a movie or something like that. I'd openly just chuck my wrapper on the table in front of us, where he would slowly be folding it up and he'd hide it in his pocket. It's almost like
I still do it now. I hide stuff in the bin.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not ashamed, I don't think I am. I cycle 25 miles in a day sometimes, and I work really hard, and I'm kind of in a better place where I can have a bit of chocolate and I ain't too worried about it. But I'll still hide that bit of chocolate at the bottom of the bin under everything, because I don't want anyone to see it. Or if we're gonna have
it from yourself, that's, I think, the point. Is that's how I think.
If we're gonna have a biscuit with our tea, I'll eat mine in the kitchen while I'm making the tea, and I'll bring Charlotte's in. I can't just reward myself. It sounds odd, and I guess people who haven't ever been through it wouldn't.
It's very good of you to be so open about it, because I think it is important. It's particularly important as well, I think, because not enough men acknowledge their struggles with food.
No.
They're more willing these days to acknowledge struggles with alcohol or something else, but not around food. One of the things I know, for example, one of the biggest relapse factors in alcoholism in men, specifically in men, is food. So men who are in sort of abstinence-based recovery around alcohol, the biggest relapse rate will be through food. So it's a big issue for men.
Yeah, definitely.
And overeating is the biggie, not the restriction anorexic side of thing, but it's the overeating, and that's where guys are going. So I think it's really important, in particular, to be hearing a guy talking about this stuff, and the struggles that come with it. So after this overeating, this binging, which would give you a temporary relief, your strongest feeling would be sort of guilt and shame. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and just
I've done something wrong. I've failed. I'm a bad person. Yeah.
And like
that's the difference between. I mean, that's the difference between, say, guilt and shame. As a therapist, I try to explain to people. So, guilt is I've done something wrong. Shame is I am wrong. Yeah. And you recognise that difference, right? I could see you just immediately go, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Shame, didn't you?
Yeah. You just, I don't know, like you sort of just, you almost just sort of, you couldn't feel any worse, basically.
There's something very rotten about me at the core.
Yeah. And it's just like, maybe this is just what I am. And then I think once I lost the weight, that side of me is still present. Unfortunately, I've learned to, all the things that I've got, and Charlotte has been amazing through this all the years we've been together, and I've almost let it be, it is part of who I am, as opposed to I'm not very well, or I've got mental problems or whatever. I prefer to kind of just say, I don't try and make a joke out of it, because it's really not funny, but I try and just kind of be open about it, because it makes me feel better about it. And like I said to you on the phone the other day, I want other people listening to this, even if there's one person listening to this tonight that might admit that they might not be as okay as they thought they were, and speak to someone about it, then that's why I do it. And on the flip side of the eating stuff, there's the exercise bit, and I've literally destroyed myself, haven't I?
Yeah.
Through exercise, because I will batter myself.
He's got every injury going.
Because so I've done like 5 marathons. I get obsessed. I've got like an obsessive personality, addictive personality. So I got addicted to running, and I did marathons, and it was great. London Marathon's best thing I ever done, family and marriage aside. But I ended up running myself into the ground, and I was doing thousands of miles a year, and I was going out in the snow, and I was falling over, and then I was running on injuries, and now I've got to have an operation. And then I can see the same thing happening with a bike. It's gone from, oh, this is nice, to, even if it's raining, I'm going.
I have to go.
Even if I'm not well, I'm going.
He gets like anxious. Like we have to sometimes a weekend like plan when he does his exercise. So it's not just like, oh, I'm going to pop to the gym, like a casual, I might go gym today, it's Saturday. He'll go like, right, when can I fit in when I go gym, or when can I fit in my bike ride, or whatever it might be? Because until he does that form of exercise, he cannot relax.
I can't eat
at all. Cannot
it's
switch
sort of
off.
linked to my eating. So,
and I go, oh, why don't you just go after lunch? Like, let's just have a lazy morning at home. It's Saturday or whatever, you know, let's just chill. And then he's just on edge the whole entire day. And in the end, I'm like, just go out and just do it, get it done with.
Did you know that guy struggled with this stuff before you met Alex? So was it on your radar at all?
What, with Alex or just general guys?
General, I mean, sort of.
No, not at
you,
all.
laughed,
I just
laughed at me when I told you I was going running tonight before we were together. Do you remember at work? I was like, you was like, what are you doing tonight? Because we met at work. I was like, she's like, what are you doing tonight? I was like, oh, I'm just going for a run. And she laughed at me. And I was like, what?
Because I'm the complete opposite to Alex. I just don't do exercise. Like, it's just not for me. Like, I've tried, okay? I just don't enjoy it. I think I like the escapism of going for a walk down the river and the fresh air and the open spaces and having some time out. But putting yourself through pain, which is what I thought of it like, it just, for me, it just didn't.
You ain't worried about it, are you?
I don't feel like I've needed that in my life. There's different things that different people need, and for me, exercise was never one of them.
You don't need to worry about going to the gym.
Yeah. It's just not for me. I hate like,
exercise in that. So.
I've been at the gym a few times, and I felt for mostly the girls, you were just standing
I reckon
around
you do
looking
your,
nice, and I was like, oh, I've got my hair scraped back, all greasy, and like, you know, trying to exercise.
I reckon you do your
like,
10,000 steps and your weightlifting during the day.
I think so. I think I do enough.
Right, yeah.
But I think I've never heard. I just assume guys go to the gym and work out, or they do this. Never the need to have to do it. It was almost like, oh yeah, they're down the gym all the time. That's just what lads do almost. But with Alex, it was like a deal breaker. Like we have to organise.
If I've done my exercise, I can then eat.
But that's another thing.
Like just not eat as in gorge, just eat.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I definitely get it. Charlotte, just, you know, thinking about you, I'm just wondering about this because both of you, I mean, the way you come across is, you know, a really nice, two nice, lovely people that, you know, I'd be really nice to meet you in a cafe and sit there and have a chat. Or, do you know what I mean?
We all have 5 children.
Even with your kids there, it'd be lovely to have your kids there as well. But there must have been times for you, Charlotte, I don't know, maybe there weren't, but I'm wondering whether times when you said to yourself, what am I doing with this bloke? He's got all these problems.
I've said that many times to Alex's face. No, but there are times I've never been able to grasp it. It's only been, I would say, the last couple of years I've really understood Alex's mental health problems, shall we say, or his anxiety.
We were in too deep by then.
Yeah, we're married with children by then. I can't escape.
I know, I was going to say, yeah. What was the impact then? Before you're sort of, I know that you do understand now. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to the work that you do as a couple because you do amazing work. I know.
Sure.
But just to sort of, it's what we call identification, to give people identification who may be at an earlier stage in this thing. You know, what was it? What did you go through, Charlotte? Because I can't imagine that, you know, unless your name is Jesus Christ, that it was just like, oh, this is fine, no problem. It was
hard because it was tough, and that is on it. I've said that before. It's nothing that we haven't discussed really, but like I never got the obsessive side of it. It would actually drive me mad to a point where like we'd be away for a weekend in Centre Parks, and he had to go home on the Sunday early to go and play football. And I'm like, we don't have to go this week. Can you just have a week off? No, I have to go. And I don't think it was purely because he wanted to play football. I think it was the exercise sides of it. You know, we'd go on holiday and he had to go for a run within an hour of being there to find the route of the run to go on. So then he knew that was where he would go. And in the end, I'm like, for God's sake, like, this is ridiculous. Like, can't we just go to the beach? Can't we just go swimming pool? Or like, you know, just, I know that sounds like it's the simple things, isn't it? Just like, I found it difficult to understand why he wanted to be like that. And it would frustrate me and annoy me because there'd be often he'd come home late from work and then he had to do a run before we had dinner. So like pre-children, we lived in a flat together and I was home at 6 o'clock cooking dinner ready for him. He'd get home late. Then he had to do his run. And I'd be like, it's just really selfish sometimes. And I'd get really angry and annoyed and be like, why do I have to wait for you? And he's like, well, just eat your dinner then. I was like, so I've got to sit on my own and eat my dinner. I know It sounds so
No, I get
stupid
it.
and shallow, but there were so many times I was like, right, well, I've got to wait for you again, or now it's all about our whole entire day is revolved around what your exercise.
But that's the point, isn't it? That untreated, these mental health problems dominate everybody's.
Yeah, totally. And
Not just the person who's got the illness. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I guess, like you said, there were times where it was frustrating and it was annoying, to be honest. And I was like, I didn't get it, and I was just, I don't know, it was a difficult. So I mean, we never rowed about it. We've always been very open. Lucky enough, that's our relationship has been very communicating. And if he annoyed me, as soon as he got home, I'd tell him, and he'd be like, "Oh, I've just got in the door. Give us a minute." But no, we're very open about things. And there's always been a time where, when it comes to the obsessive side of his exercise, I never understood it. And there would be times where I would say to him, "Can't you just not go?" And he would look at me like, "No, like I have to go." And I'd be like, "Come on, just don't go today." And I'm like almost trying to persuade him not to go. And then I could just see the sheer anxiety, like the panic that would rise up inside of him, almost like, I have to go. How am I going to get out of this one, almost? And that's, I suppose, where I learned very quickly that it was never going to change. And actually, this is the way he is. And actually, you either accept it or you don't you? And obviously, I choose to accept the way he was. So, but yeah, it was difficult at times, especially when you'd want to.
Alex, what about the impact apart from the impact of your mental health struggles, which you were trying to manage without the appropriate tools? You were doing the best that you could. Were you? I mean, it's often the case, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was the case for you as well. But often the case is when somebody has mental health problems and they have a partner and children like that, they can often then feel like they're a burden on their loved ones, and that can compound some of the problems. Were you struggling with those types of thoughts as well?
Not so much with the eating and the body stuff, but with the anxiety and depression, definitely.
Right.
Like I remember the first time I opened up about it on Instagram. Someone wrote to me and said, "Why have you had kids then if you know that you've got this? Because they're probably going to end up like that." And I was just like,
there are some people in the world that are really
terrible people. Terrible people.
Whoa, hang on a minute.
I know, and it just, and I just thought, obviously, if someone says, you're this, that, and the other, you're like, all right then. But when it's something like that, you kind of go, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm bringing I think that was the thing that made me get help, because it was sort of, I can't really remember if it was, I've been having help since way before the girls, but it wasn't until we had the girls, and it wasn't because of the girls, it was just so happened to sort of coincide that I actually started taking medication and kind of recovering a little bit. And one of the things that was really difficult was when I first told Charlotte that I was having suicidal thoughts. I remember telling her, and when I went to tell her, I think she was bracing herself for me to say, like, oh, I'm leaving you, or I've been.
I've got something to talk to you about. Like, you need to sit down. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to leave.
Right. Exactly. I hate those.
Poor children. How could he do that?
And it was incredibly difficult to just come out with it, because,
it's a difficult topic, isn't it?
It's one of the worst things you can say to someone. Like that.
How long had you been having the suicidal thoughts for at that point?
I think longer than I realised. I've always looked at a lot of scenarios and sort of thought, well, if it goes wrong, I'll just kill myself. That's when it first started.
I imagine that came quite early in your life.
That was quite early, and then as time went on, it changed from kind of a get out of jail card to like a popping out of nowhere thing.
So intrusive thinking, as you're just
intrusive thinking, but also I'd get off the train, and then I'd be walking through Liverpool Street, and then I'd look at a train and just think,
I could just do that. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have to deal with all the things I've got to deal with today. The dog's here. And then there was also the ones where I was on my own and I was driving home and I thought, well, I could just crash in that tree. And then
I think that's what I remember him once saying to me, do you ever have like that thought of going, what if I just drive and crash into that tree or drive off that bridge? Do you ever think that? And I just looked at him and thought, no, why would you think something like that? And it was kind of little things like that he would slip in conversation, wouldn't you, a few times? And I found that strange. Like, I'll be like, what do you mean? He'd be like, oh no, I just did you ever have you ever felt like that? And I'm like, no. And then that would be like the end of the conversation. So I think it's been there underlying.
Yeah, and it evolved on social media really. Like I found it easier to talk about it. And a lot of the time Charlotte would read the things I'd written and I hadn't told her about. I'd been feeling like that today. But although it was going out to thousands of people, I found it really kind of therapeutic and a lot easier to just write it down and talk about it like that. And I don't know why. And
because the paper isn't going to have an emotional reaction.
No, well, yeah, there you go.
You know what I mean? It's not, you're not worried about it going, what's going to happen with it. No, I get it. Narrative, writing stuff down is a classic thing that we do in therapy.
Yeah, and like my dad would call me, and then brother would call me, and then work would call me in on the next day and be like, "Is everything all right?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." Like,
what's your problem?
You know, a dark cloud came over for some reason, and this dark cloud can often appear on the sunniest day. You know, that's the hardest bit for me. You know, we could be, you know, at Centre Parks or whatever, having a wonderful time, and then 2 minutes later, I'm fantasizing about killing myself, and I'm like, why? And it's awful.
And why it pops in.
And like, I think I said this to you the other day. I genuinely have a fear of dying. Like, that's the most ironic thing about this. Like, that I'm really like worried about the process and what will happen to me. And I don't want to die one bit, but I have this like really strange kind of, well, it's my mind, and there's nothing I can do about it. But that I almost try and, again, not make a joke out of it, but just try and like normalize it, because when I've spoken to, you know, I've got a friend at the moment that's going through something, and he opened up to me about something similar, and he was like, I can only tell you that because I know that you're going through it. I wouldn't tell anybody this. And it might, you know, I was really upset because I felt really privileged that it told me, and it just made me realise that there's probably loads of people, like not just guys, but women as well, that have these thoughts. And
I think for you though, it helps to say something out loud, makes it real, which then means you're sharing that problem. So often I would say to him so many times, talk to me about it, tell me. He's like, no, I don't want to. Like, he didn't want to burden me with these problems. But then when he did, we'd sit and talk about it, and we'd break. I'm quite black and white, so I would be like, so what are these 10 things that are bothering you? Let's go through one at a time and work it out. But his mind don't work like that. So that was how. But then to share that on Instagram,
you'd almost cringe at, like, why are you telling everyone this stuff?
Yeah, like when he'd put something on Instagram and he'd write his heart on, you know, heart on his sleeve sort of thing, and put something really open on Instagram, and I'd be like, why are you telling everybody that? Like, that's a really personal thing that we should be discussing. Like, even though I know how he feels, but there were certain times I was like, I didn't realize you felt like that today. You haven't even told me. You told 100,000 people, like, what's going on? And he'd be like, oh, I don't know. I didn't even really, until I started typing, and suddenly it outflowed. But to then put it on black and white, like you say, makes you feel better, doesn't it? It used to, I think that's what helps him, is that saying it out loud, so to speak, and then getting interaction back, and knowing that he's not the only one who feels that way. And then knowing that he's helping others by saying it out loud, I think is a way you deal with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think.
We've had, we've had some comments coming through. I'm just going to read one to you from Sel Eliz, who says, hats off to Alex. It can't be easy living every day with dysmorphia, but he's got a supportive wife to help him on his journey. Hope he manages to find some balance and peace of mind to enjoy the rest of his life, which is really nice counterpoint to that strange person who said that other very strange thing to you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's a lot of really good people out there. I just want to
absolutely.
And to anybody who might be listening or watching this show who's worried about coming out of the closet, as it were, there is actually a lot of kind, supportive people out there who get what's going on. And I think a lot of the stuff that goes on inside somebody's head who's in the caught up in their own mental health issues are things that do need to be outside of the head, as you say, Charlotte. They need to be
He's
someone.
definitely managed better that being more open, 100%. And that is something that we've learned and grown as a couple, that talking about it has definitely helped the situation. By him not wanting to burden me or not wanting to admit, that's why you say to him, like, you're not admitting to yourself that is what's going on. And he'd be like, no, I'm fine. No, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm all right. I'm not mad. Like, he'd say things like that. I'm like, not mad, but you're just struggling with certain areas that you need to just acknowledge that. And the more he acknowledged it,
particularly with the suicidality as well, I think we need to sort of be very straight up about this. The facts are that 75% of suicides are men.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the reasons why that's going on is because the lack of communication about what's happening, and also minimization. Like you just described it, Charlotte. Oh, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
And because guys do that minimization, by the time they are that bad, it feels too late to get any help.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why they end up topping themselves.
Yeah.
And so the more we can encourage everybody, and in particular men, to talk about it when it isn't so bad, less likely men in particular are going to end up in that situation where they go over the cliff and seems like there's no help. So, well, I mean, you're doing a really important job here, but I don't want to turn you into, you're not responsible for everybody's mental health, you know, it's yours and your own. So you found, how did you discover, I mean, sort of, let's find out, we've got some idea of some of the things that worked for you and helped you. And so, Charlotte, you just said about you've noticed that as Alex has begun to talk about these things more, things have been much more manageable. Things have improved.
Yeah, definitely.
What are the other things that have helped, Alex and Charlotte? What are the things that have helped along this journey into where you are now, where you're managing the situation and managing the conditions much better?
I think for me personally, once you talk, then you create a support network, and whether it's you know, your mate at work, your wife, and it can be a really strange person. Like I've confided in, you know, not literally, but like the bloke that you see on the bus, you know, or just someone. Even I've confided in people at work before who I don't really know, and I think sometimes they're easier to talk to. Like you don't necessarily, you know, I get a lot of people ask me, like when they come to me and just, you know, I never give medical advice. I never recommend anything. I just tell them what I did or how I feel. But I just said, you know, it's not, you don't necessarily reach out to the obvious people that you might, oh, you know, tell your mum or tell your best mate, because then people are just like, what? And, you know, I had it with a lot of my mates. I still can't talk to about this because I'm still like Nutty Al who downs a pint in 3 seconds and has got a load of tattoos, and, you know, they don't get it. It's a
serious conversation, isn't it?
And they just want to talk about, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. They want to talk about football and want to have a laugh down the pub and that. And the actual having this conversation is difficult, but once you start, whether it's just admit it to yourself, writing it down, then once you get that support network, I've now got a couple of different people I can talk to about it, and it isn't like a shock to them. We can just go bang, you know, Charlotte's parents talk to me about it a bit, got a few mates, my boss, you know, there's people, obviously Charlotte, but there's people that I can just talk to about it. And
I think a lot of people don't understand, and I was definitely one of them people previously. Like, I didn't understand what was going on. So when he'd tell me like, oh, I'm having these thoughts or I'm feeling like this, I'd be like, oh, you're fine, and try and persuade him. Like,
you were like the old pull your socks up and come on, get on with it.
I'm like the really positive one. So I am constantly like
which
the
the
one
worst
that's
thing
like,
you can get told when you're
so it's completely
struggling.
opposite. So I would say to him like, look, you've got a lovely, lovely family. We've got your friends around, you've got a good job, you've got a nice house. And I'd like list 10 things that was really good and positive in our life. Like, we're healthy, we're happy, you should be really happy with this. You should just embrace it and just come on, you're fine. And he'd be like, that just doesn't help. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it just I never really understood it. And I think a lot of people that he tries to talk to, like friends or other people, that they just don't get it. They don't understand. They go, oh, come on, mate, you're all right. You've got loads of family, like, you know, you've got all your friends. Like, but until I suppose somebody thinks or understands or have been part of it, or, you know, somebody's experienced that side of it, then it's hard for somebody to understand what somebody else is going through. And I think for you, things that have helped are talking out loud, talking to other people, and making it a conversation that's a normal conversation, rather than a conversation like, oh, I can't talk to them about it because I don't get it. Actually, talk about it, and then they'll understand it. That's how we've worked through this. Like, tell me so I understand why you're feeling that way. Then that way I can see that mood coming before you even know it. And I often say to him, sometimes I go to him like, I think you're struggling a bit, aren't you? And he's like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, I can see it. I can see where we're going, and I can see where we're heading, sort of thing. And I think you to help is to talk out loud to people, and by helping others almost. What helps you, Charlotte? What helps you? Don't know.
You're just a very, like, I'm not obviously sound really cheesy, but you're just like an amazing person that,
thanks,
like, has this way of like she just, I
have to be positive, which is probably a terrible thing. And I know people probably often say to me, but often I say to him, like, I can't have a bad day, because if I have a bad day and get in a mood, it spins off onto Alex, and he has a really terrible week. And I'm conscious of that sometimes, which isn't a good way for myself, because I'm like, I should be allowed to have a bad day. But bad days don't work well for me. I am the brighter, positive person, and that works for my life. Like, I would rather get up, and don't get wrong, I do have my moody days where I'm tired and I'm fed up and all that. But generally, what helps me is to just try and think of the positives and try and think of the things that I am grateful for in life, and I am lucky to have around me, like people, or, you know, health and things like that. And I try and focus on them things where,
well, you know, there's lots of evidence that gratitude is a very powerful.
Yeah, massively, yeah. And just the simple things, like often, you know, I've had a bad day and I'm moaning, I'm miserable, and I'm moaning to Alex about it, and then I'm like, oh, the girls have drove me mad today, I'm fed up, can't wait for bedtime. And then every parent does it, and then they go to bed and I'm like, oh, I love them so much, you know, like they have that. But for me, it's just trying to always continue to be on the positive side of life. It just works for me. I don't know why, it just does. Like,
and obviously
it doesn't seem to me, Charlotte, which is a trap I think partners can fall into. It doesn't seem to me that you're trying to be your husband's caretaker. You're not. So
no.
I mean, from the conversation, I'm interpreting it, but from the conversation, it seems to me that you're aware that he has to do his own work around this stuff. He has
oh, definitely.
Responsibility for himself.
He is his own person, and he takes responsibility for his own thing. I'm there to support him, but I can't tell him what to do. I can't tell him how to act. I can't tell him what he should be doing. Like I used to be, in a way, like, oh, come on, you're fine, pull your socks up. But I've realized that doesn't work, and that isn't a quick fix. It isn't a quick fix. And so for me, I just leave our lives together. I'm there if he needs me. And I recognize sometimes in the background, I think he's, you know, maybe having a little moment, or he's going to be having a bad few weeks. You know, you can just sense the little, I don't know, I can see the little signals.
His mental health struggles haven't become the whole of the family experience.
Definitely not. Like, obviously, I think the last few years, it's definitely been more open and more discussed. Right. I think my whole family never quite really realized how much he struggled until recently, the last few years. And they were all quite shocked, like, I didn't realize it was this bad. And then I got really upset because of that, because I was like, oh, I've actually been dealing with this with him for quite a long time. And then suddenly I'm quite a private person in a way. And then all of a sudden it's out there for everyone to know. And it's making it very real. And that was hard.
If you filmed our house, which we do sometimes, you wouldn't be like, he's got a problem.
No.
Like most of the time, you know, like we support each other. Charlotte has bad days. Charlotte gets
definitely
upset.
does not take over the relationship or our
Like,
family
I
life.
doubt the neighbours
Definitely not.
know, you know, because obviously people on social media know and people that we talk to, but just to normal people, you wouldn't know. It's not like it happens all the time, or
everyday life is pretty normal.
I guess, yeah, I mean, I think that's true, but I guess one of the things I would say as well is that we tend to think of mental health or mental illness as something that's happening outside of normal range of experience, when it's not. It's very much part of the normal range of experience. And 3 out of 5 people at any point throughout their life will struggle with mental illness. So it's the norm, it's not the unusual thing. And that's, you know, I think that's, and you're beautifully describing something which I think is really important, which is how, particularly with complex and more difficult mental illness that take a long time, we never really get cured of them, but we learn to manage them more effectively and get on with our lives and find that bit of those aspects of our lives that are functioning well. And you know, you're describing it and sort of being it very beautifully, that thing which I would call recovery, this sort of recovery model, which is not we get cured and we get on with normal life. We just learn how to adapt our needs and our coping mechanism so that we function more effectively, even though we still have these problems and probably will have them to some extent forever, and that's all right. It's not a big deal. The other things that you said that have helped with you is medication, and I think you mentioned therapy as well. Can you tell us about some of your experiences there and why that has helped? Just so, again, for the purposes of identification for people, and also I think, again, I don't want to go on into it too much, but again, for guys as well, you know, it's very typically the case that guys are quite avoidant of getting these types of help.
Definitely. He would refuse to start to begin with. He was like, you know, our doctor said I should go on some tablets, but I don't really want to, you know. And then it was like, I'd say, why don't you go and talk to someone? You know, you can talk to me as much as you want, but actually sometimes talking to someone who you don't know, who knows nothing about us, you could be really raw and really open and not have any guilt of saying, well, actually, you know, my wife drives me mad sometimes, or, you know, whatever. It's not
just even, you know, worried about telling your wife because your wife's got 5 kids to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And why should
for you?
So I get it. So what was your experience then, Alex? The meds.
He's like trying to say, stop answering the question for me. This is what happened.
Like, but he was one of the men who would not go to doctors to get the tablets. Wouldn't go to doctors to go be referred for a therapist. But now you have. I'm sorry. Right. I'm talking too much. But now you have it's helped. So definitely.
She goes to me before we done this. I don't know what I'm going to say because I don't really. I think it's going to be about you. But anyway, no. I think it's important to. My first experience with therapy was a negative one,
right?
And I think it's important to say that because I wouldn't. If anyone did get it and didn't get out of it what they were hoping, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But it took me a couple of years to try again. But basically, the first time I had it was I was struggling at work. I weren't myself. I was feeling a bit low, and it went on and on and on and. I had some of the symptoms that I guess you'd associate with depression, and I started to feel, I know what anxiety is. And the best way I describe it is you've just lost your child in the supermarket and you don't know where they are, and you do that. And then you get this pain.
Description. Exactly. Yeah.
And I was having that quite often and I didn't really know why, because I weren't really anxious about anything. Anyway, went to see someone. He told me, I'm quite fortunate to get private health. So I went to see someone that was supposedly great. And he told me that I had an addictive personality. I was addicted to everything, alcohol, gambling, you name it. And I needed to go to a rehab centre for a month.
And that was going to fix it.
And that was going to fix everything. And I couldn't get out of there quick enough. And
you mentioned the referral fees he was probably getting for.
Yeah, probably.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, what?
Yeah.
What on earth?
Yeah, exactly.
Although
put you off
the fault of it now, I'll be quite nice just to sit in some old wine. No, but
until you get the bill, I'm telling you, until you get the bill,
yeah. Well, I got private health, is all right. No, I didn't go back for a long time, but then obviously things got worse again. Went back. I can't fully remember the whole, the chain of my therapy, but
just for the benefit of people who are
Yeah.
listening, why that's just bonkers advice, because it is bonkers advice. When you
yeah,
meet somebody first time, the first thing you say is go to residential care. That's absolutely
I know.
against clinical advice in the UK.
It was the
UK,
first session as well.
From NICE is the government body that determines treatments for everything. So the National Institute of Health and Clinical Excellence are very clear. They say hospital and inpatient treatment is not the first choice, it's the last choice. That you should be treating people in their own homes and in their community, not in hospital. So for you to go and see somebody who the first thing they say to you is to go to residential treatment, blimey, they should be struck off, to be honest.
I know.
Quite frankly.
I know.
So if anybody's listening to this, this is not what's going to happen to you.
No.
Incredible therapist.
Yeah, which is why I wanted to bring it up, because I think, like I said, if someone off the back of this goes and sees someone, and I mean, my initial thought was, right, what will happen is I'll sit in a room and I'll tell that person everything that's worrying me, and then I'll cry, and then I'll feel a bit better, and that'll be cool. That did happen further down the line when I went to see a lady. She was lovely. I had about 10, 12 sessions, and I got a load of stuff off my chest. I refused the medication purely because a couple of people I knew at work and stuff had told me that it was really hard to get off once you're on it. And I was quite strong-willed to think I don't need it, and I didn't want to go through any of that stuff. And at the time it made sense. In hindsight, I should have done it. But then I also had hypnotherapy for my anxiety, which was amazing.
Yeah, it's very successful for that. It's
amazing. I literally went back on this timeline, opened my brain up, got out this thing that was from my childhood, which was like making me anxious, and took it out and threw it over there. And it sounds bizarre, but I sort of replaced it with
timeline therapy is really, really good techniques. So.
And I replaced the anxiety with feeling like I scored a goal at a football match. And it's like kind of work.
Reframing. I did that with my fear of flying.
Oh, really?
Decided to excitement.
Yeah, it works. And but then at the moment I am on antidepressants and anxiety medication, which I've sort of got up to the dose that my therapist feels is the right dose. It weren't great to start with, you just felt a bit rough, and but
I'd say which one you're taking, just so we know. Is that okay?
What's it called? I can't think what it's called.
So Roxat.
No, I'll write it on Instagram sometimes.
Fluoxetine.
Can you just check? Oh, escitalopram.
Escitalopram.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Easy for you to say. That's what I couldn't remember. I'll take that.
So that's called an SSRI. So there's this whole. They're not so modern anymore, but they were the big thing that came in sort of 30 years, I think, now ago. But they were the big sort of major upgrade in anti-anxiety, antidepressants. And there are, for those that are listening, with SSRIs, there is a syndrome some people get, which means that they need to taper off using, which is what you were referring to earlier on. But it's not a hugely difficult condition for most people, as long as you do come off slowly over a period of time rather than just suddenly stop. But you don't get hooked on them in the same way that you can for things like Valium and that whole family of sort of drugs.
I think that's what you were worried about.
Do you know what? The only thing that was difficult was I ran out and I couldn't get
during lockdown.
And I ran out for about 4 days, and sort of day one I started thinking, well, actually I might just come off of them, which was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
About day 3, I was a mess.
Yeah.
Like I was almost like a drug addict of like
Needing them.
not needing them because I needed to take a tablet or a fix. It was because in my head I was like
Awful, yeah.
creating a scenario that just wasn't there, and I just felt so anxious and weird and sick. And
by taking that tablet, it eases his mind, knowing, okay, fine, I've had that. And by them not being there, the anxiety was growing, because he was like, I haven't got my tablets. But it's not because he's addicted to his tablets. He's knowing that helps him manage it. And by not having them close by and not knowing when it was coming, I think your anxiety was getting the better of you all of a sudden.
So there is, we should say to people who do take this form of medication that stopping suddenly is a really bad idea. Which is what happened to you. You, by accident, you stopped suddenly.
Yeah.
And you're not really having withdrawal symptoms. What happens is that the symptoms of the depression and anxiety that the medication has been managing suddenly hit you as a double whammy. And it feels a lot worse because you were getting used to feeling okay. So it's become, but they're really safe family of men.
They've helped.
They've definitely helped.
On the therapy side, I've chosen not to have regular therapy. Like, I don't know why, I just don't want to. There's things I just feel like I don't want to sit and talk about at the moment. So I have my actual guy that prescribes me my tablets. I speak to him probably every 2 months now, and we just have it's almost a bit like this. He says, how's work, how's the kids, how's the wife, how do you feel about this? The test you do where you mark out of 5, is it how anxious you feel about certain things, and
GAD and PHQ and all that stuff.
How you sleeping, how we talk about that stuff. He knows what my triggers are. He knows the stuff that he knows what I'm like. And the last time we spoke, he was like, look, I'm really pleased with how it's going. You sound like you're in control of it. I don't want to reduce your dosage at the moment. I'll speak to you in 2 months. And it was just like a half hour. And he said to me, do you want me to refer to your GP? And I was like, do you know what? I just like talking to you. You're just like, he's just easygoing and he's all right. And I can tell him anything,
But there's a really important message there for people who are listening, which is that you make these things work for you. You don't just step in and think this person's going to fix me. You engage with them and you find what's going to work for you. And a good therapist, as you say, will adapt what they're doing to your needs. You shouldn't have to be adapting to the therapist's needs at all. So it does sound like you've come a long way with this in terms of the sort of management strategies that you've got in place. I just want to highlight, we're actually coming to the end of the show and you're worried about whether you'd have enough to talk about. But we've only got a few minutes left, literally. And it's been amazing so far. I mean, it's sort of, when you do strike me as an extraordinary couple of people and also a very extraordinary couple. So one of the nice things for me as a professional, mental health professional, is that often what happens in situations like this is that the mental health problems dominate so much that it takes over your personality, and it takes over the personality of the family, etc., etc. And he clearly hasn't done that in this situation. And you both have your own lives, your own personalities, and you're right at the beginning of the show, your description of how you've managed the lockdown and how much closer you've got and you've discovered what's important in life is you're doing all those normal things that people are doing during this lockdown period, which is fantastic to hear. I mean, it's a really hopeful story. Before we finish, I want to make sure that people who are listening and watching know how they can follow up in terms of contact with you, because you mentioned several times now stuff on social media. Tell me briefly about what you're doing on social media and how people can follow you and keep up with your story.
So it's hard to put it in a nutshell, but basically we've got a parenting a family Instagram, Mama to Triplet Girls, Daddy to Triplet Girls, that we just started as a bit of fun.
What's it called, the account?
Mine's at Mama to Triplet Girls, and Alex is daddy to triplet girls, or daddy _ to.
We'll make sure that this goes out with the show so people have the links.
Yeah. Or just search Charlotte Galbally, Alex Galbally, and it might come up then. It's probably easier. But there are parenting blogs basically of us just sharing our life as a large family of 7 basically, and it started from when the girls were born, mostly because we found there was no real.
Did you say 7? You've forgotten something.
A family of 7. 5 kids, us 2.
No, there's 8 of you, isn't there? Because
with the dog.
The dog. You can't leave the dog out. For goodness.
We never leave him out.
We'll. No, we basically
rip your throats out. They were in bed if you do.
Yeah. No, we basically we talk about everything. We share the highs and lows. Open, it isn't massively focused on mental health, but I do post about it sometimes. And like I said to you when we spoke last week, I feel as a person that has a platform and a voice in the world, and I'm very grateful for that I can't not talk about this stuff. An important topic, because it's so taboo and difficult to talk about that. A, it makes me feel better, but B, if it makes somebody else feel better, then it's important and it's worth doing. And I'm not trying to ram it down anyone's throat, and I can go for weeks sometimes without mentioning it, but we share everything. We're not naked or anything.
We're very open with life as a people that have got lots of children and are dealing with something like mental health, and we're very open with the ups and the downs of normal life. And I think it is good for the people that are maybe struggling. We often have wives contacting Alex saying how do I get my husband to go to see someone, or how does Charlotte deal with it, because my husband also is the same as you. And it's nice to just talk to people in our DMs and help others. And we never, like I said, we just share our own experience, I guess, of what might help somebody. So
the more we have of that, the better. Do you know what I mean? It's and for me as a professional, I've got a real belief in peer-to-peer support. I ultimately, I don't want to have my job. I love what I do, don't get me wrong, but I prefer to live in a world where I wasn't needed. And if people were helping each other and I was out of a job, that's perfect for me.
Yeah, that's nice.
I'd be buggering off to go and spend time with my stepson in Spain, and
nice.
Coming back here, not with the weather we had today as well. I was like, oh my God. Why did I come back? What is striking me about your story, and we are coming to the end, so I'm just wrapping up now, is that how you have managed to maintain a well-rounded life and not allow these mental health problems to dominate and take over. And that's got to be the most positive message. I have to say, because when I started my career, I started on hospital closure programs, because it was when we'd gone from treatment models, which was stick people in hospitals, to treating people in their own homes and communities. And I was involved in the closure of some of these institutions. They're dreadful things, absolutely dreadful places to send people. And you two are a sort of shining example of what it's like these days. The best form of mental health treatment is that you continue with your life, and then you find those things that help you manage the illness more effectively, and it gets better and better over time. But the most important thing is that you get on with your life and you're still achieving, having a family, having a job, having a partner. Because I'm telling you, sort of, if you get into just obsessing about the illness and trying to focus on that, it's the end.
Consume you, can't it? Completely.
End of everything. It really is. It's been really lovely.
Why it does work, because that is something that Alex has always said, is I don't want this to be everything. This is not, this isn't the focus. Yeah, I am having a bad day or whatever, a week or whatever it is, but actually let's try and focus on other things as well. And
which kind of contradicts let's pull your socks up and get on with it, because that's wrong. But I think there is a responsibility upon the individual to want to get on with it, and that's the difference. And that's something that is really important to me, because I'm determined to not let this beat us.
Exactly.
And
you've got a lot of things going for you. I mean,
absolutely.
That's the point.
But I know we're coming to the end, but when you look at some of the high-profile suicides how much of them people had going for them. You know, Robin Williams and people like that. I mean, probably one of the funniest people in the world, probably one of the richest, and that just proves that, you know, it isn't about what you've got and what you haven't got. It's about what's going on and managing it, and that's why we've got to talk about it.
And managing it every day, like you said. That's the key, isn't it?
Absolutely. And managing it within your life. Do you know what I mean? Not something that's separate. It's very much part of what's going on.
Part of your life, but not taking over your life.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have to finish there, I'm afraid. I can keep going.
Lovely, thank you.
Keep going for hours. It's been really wonderful to have you on. I'm just going to say bye-bye to everybody. I should remember who we have on next week. My team tell me, but, you know, I never, ever remember. So we will have new guests on. Oh, I think I remember. Jennifer Irvine, I think, is next week's guest from, she runs an amazing company that provides wonderful food that will be delivered to your home. So it's going to be a nutritious and delicious show next week. There you go. My team are going to really think something's happened. What's going wrong with Noel? He's actually the guests are extraordinary. You've inspired me, you two. Thank you so much for having you on. Say goodbye to everybody, and I'll see all you folks next week.
Thanks for having us.